directly to the issue of blaming the public.
Okay.
For me, it's very problematic when you blame the public, and we have institutions that are there that are supposed to implement the work that were given.
Yeah.
And for me, it's about system change. And system change, it means, and in terms of Kenya, we have class issue. The haves and the haves not. And like you, maybe in your point of privilege, the one that you have also affirmed, you shouldn't be the first person in blaming the people who their issues have been depoliticized in a manner of also human rights. In a manner whereby, you know, during elections, most people are party supporters. We have party owners, party members, and party supporters. And we know who are the party owners. And majority of them are men.
Okay.
Should we admit all these problems of Kenya that we are going through, they are brought by men? If you ask me. Because me, I'll say it's the men who are putting all of us in this trouble.
Okay.
And that's the gender question also that comes. Are we in all this shit because of men?
Please watch your language on this show.
It's
the reality. You cannot say it like the reality. Because we come and depoliticize on issues. Like you see also yesterday in the two-third agenda rule. Whatever happened. We are quick to blame. And that's why when you say we watch also our language, that's why you put the word corruption, but you know it's stealing, not corruption.
Okay.
It is stealing. So you have to be clear and be honest as Kenyans and speaking truth to power.
All right.
And not saying we want to say this and not this.
And not that.
Yeah.
Let's move this conversation into the issue of human rights. And I want to bring in some startling statistics here before we get to Hussein Khalid, Executive Director, Haki Africa. He's on phone from Mombasa. He couldn't make it here, but we want to give you some statistics that came in through to our newsrooms. Close to 900 people have been allegedly killed by police bullets from 2013 to 2018. That's a record of about 6 years. So records show that in 2013, there were about 143. In 2014, there were about 199. 2015, there were around 126. And in 2016, there were 144. 2017, 152. And 2018, that's last year, 109. That makes a total of 885. And there's a demographics to this as well, Wain,
That's right. Now, from those statistics, the report further reveals that majority of the deceased are male, aged between 15 to 35 years, and there could be many cases that have not been documented. You can also find more information on missingvoices.or.ke. And the Human Rights Commission figures were compiled by obtaining reports from different organizations and verifying the names of victims, their ages, and their home areas as well.
So the main issue here is that there are many cases that have not been documented, and we're talking about 885. Hussein Khalid will be joining us on phone from Mombasa. They're supposed to give us statistics and is actually with us on phone. Hussein, what have you seen from where you are? Thanks for joining us, actually.
Thank you so much, Trevor, for having me. And let me first of all apologize profoundly for missing the show. I hope that we'll be able to get an opportunity to come to the studio and discuss this further in detail. The statistics from this end are actually quite grim. The state of human rights is actually deteriorating, not just at the coast, but at the national level too. And it's for this reason that we are really trying to engage with key state actors to let them understand the situation and also to get them to do something about it. Last month, we were able to meet up with the Minister for Interior, Mr. Matiang'i, and we explained to him what's happening. Yesterday, of course, we were with the Director of Public Prosecutions, again, taking him to the ground to see what is happening, to hear from the people themselves about the sorry state of human rights. And even today, we are actually going to be with the Director of National Counterterrorism, Ambassador Dr. Kimani, to also present to him the facts as they are. So, Trevor, from our end, it's that the situation is not good at all, and we need to do something to address it.
Hussein, when you say the state of human rights is deteriorating, what exactly do you mean? What parameters are we talking about?
We're actually comparing cases or human rights violations 2017 and 2018. The statistics are just out for 2018. As Haki Africa, of course, we've been documenting what has been happening, not just at the coast, but we also have contact persons from different parts of the country, Nakuru, in Kisumu, in Mandera, in Isiolo. And actually, if you look at what's happening, both state and non-state actors continue to violate human rights. If we look at Northeastern, for example, we see that KDF has been grossly engaging in human rights violations. Here at the coast, a matter of extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances has almost doubled compared to 2017. If you look at Nairobi, the same, in places such as the slums in Dandora, in Kayole, in Kibera, in Mathare, human rights situation is deteriorating. The same for Kisumu. Places like Nyeri, we actually have a case where individuals who are suspected criminals presented themselves to the authorities. And as we speak, after presenting themselves at this point in time, only 2 are surviving. And it is suspected that they have been, killed by security forces. So it's that, looking at what we had before in 2017 and the statistics that are now out for 2018, we are not seeing the situation improving, but rather worsening.
Just a quick question for you. You mentioned KDF in Northeast, and what specific examples do you have there of human rights violations?
There's one case, for example, I went myself to document, where it was reported that an IED exploded in an area known as El Wak in Mandera County. And the police suspected that Al-Shabaab had something to do with that. Although no one was killed from the KDF forces, and we thank God for that, we understand that they mobilized their colleagues and went to that community and rounded up everyone. Everyone from the community took them to the streets, forced them to lie down, and started beating them up, demanding to know who are the Al-Shabaab. And they were complaining, saying that that community is the one that is hiding Al-Shabaab insurgents. Even doctors who came out to actually help community members who had been beaten up, who had suffered, even doctors themselves were actually rounded up by the police and thoroughly beaten publicly, like public flogging. These are the kinds of atrocities that we are reporting, we have recorded. For example, that case, we reported that to Rachel Omamo, the Minister for Defense.
Okay.
We have evidence, we have, statements from the community members. We presented everything to the state to address these concerns. One person was actually beaten to death. He died 3 days later after, receiving a severe beating in that particular incident.
All right, thanks, Hussein. That's Hussein Khalid, Haki Africa Executive Director, speaking to us on phone from Mombasa, and you've heard what he said. And generally says the state of human rights is deteriorating. Extrajudicial killings are going higher. There's forced disappearances as well. I think it's only right that you respond first. First of all, do you agree with the numbers that you've seen?
I know many Kenyans have died. More than 900 people. This is the number they are saying killed by police. They have not given you the number of Kenyans killed by criminals. I wish one time they will be noble enough. We are not here to contest, because each and every life is important. Whether it is the life of a criminal, the life of a terrorist, each and every life is important. And the police have been given a mandate to protect your lives, to protect your properties, to ensure safety and security.
Okay.
That is the role of the police.
And you've made a valid point, but you still haven't answered his question. Do you agree with the numbers regarding the police? And you've come here today to speak on behalf of the police,
what I'm saying,
not on behalf of criminals who have done what they've done.
I speak on behalf of all Kenyans.
But specifically,
especially on security matters, whether you are a criminal, wherever you are. What I'm saying is I don't have my statistics with me, but I don't want to dispute the numbers of persons allegedly killed by police bullets, because I don't have my statistics with me. What I'm trying to imply is that we have a responsibility as police to secure this country, because you must first of all go to the ground and find out what is the point of conflict. Where are we? Where is the police and the community? Where is the point of conflict? Because you can see they are talking about Northeastern, they are talking about Mombasa, they are even mentioning Kisumu. And if you look at Kisumu, for example, I want to be very practical, that most of the issues raised in Kisumu were raised during elections when there was a dispute. If you come today, you'll find there's no issue raised in Kisumu today at all. So the major question that we should be asking as a country, because this is a national issue, this is an issue affecting all of us, that what is the point of conflict? And how can this point of conflict be resolved? For example, as on my point as a policeman, we talk about disappearance. We just had a Dusit attack. You saw locals involved in that Dusit attack. You find that some of those people went to Somalia, some are joining ISIS, some are joining Al-Shabaab, but nobody comes up to say, my person went to Somalia or went to this particular place, only to find them coming back armed and killing innocent people sitting in an hotel. Such like a person, when he disappears, the first thing that runs to human rights minds is the question of police has maybe killed him. So what I'm saying is we must look at the point of conflict and say, how do we resolve this problem? For example, we know very well terrorism is very live. We know very well we have firearms in the hands of wrong people. We know very well there are robbers killing people here and there. We have cattle rustlers killing people. Because I think next time I'm going to prepare for you so that you can see the number of police officers killed on duty. And I was giving an example. I think I was talking to Maiga last week that about less than a month ago, we had an officer who was killed in Busia, a police inspector. He was cut by his brother. I think no media house ever arrested, though you got the information. But you find that if that officer would have used his firearm against his brother, somebody would have said, but this man just had a panga. Why did he shoot him? Are you getting me? So when there is that fear, policemen getting attacked, policemen getting killed, when a policeman comes into contact with either an armed person or a person he suspects, you should expect that as a human being, the first thing he may think about is my life. Himself. How do I protect my life? So what I want to say, the basic thing that we need to do as a country, well, I know human rights have a weakness or a loophole because they must be able to expose the police as much as possible for them to get their funds. I'm saying that.
So you think this is all about funding?
I will be I'm not saying it is all about funding. But what I'm saying is, excuse me. You will answer me. You will have a right to reply right now. What I'm saying is, before we go to blame the police or another person, we should look at the points of conflict and say, what is the problem? How do we? Because if human rights would be spending more money on trying to resolve radicalization, issues to do with community policing and so on, it would really be very positive on us. But I know they are spending more money on campaigning, say, how much policemen are killing people.
Now that's a direct accusation to Rachel. You deal with the grassroots and human rights as well. I'd like to hear your response. What is the point of conflict? He keeps raising that
issue. For me, first, I feel insulted as a grassroots human rights defender. And as a person working and living in Mathare informal settlement, and as a person that I've seen a lot of young men getting killed by police and being victimized and profiled, as a person that we have seen even in the last 2 weeks, a woman human rights defender called Caroline Mwatha, who was defending human rights and condemning extrajudicial killing, she went missing, she was found dead, and then the narrative that came with the government was a narrative that was criminalizing her. If you look on the Amnesty report that was released last year on the state of human rights, one of the top 2 human rights violation was extrajudicial killings. And also, like in terms of trust, the first trust was going to media. Like Kenyans were believing media the first, so you see also your role in terms of human rights reporting. Secondly, it came to activists. And also, like now you can look now the conflicting issues. I'm violated by a police officer, but I'm supposed to report to the police officer who is violating me. What goes wrong? And you can see like now, the spokesperson, Charles, at first I was like, now you're making sense, but now I feel you're also shifting the blame to the human rights defender who don't get paid a single cent to document these cases. And they get threatened by the same state. And then you're shifting the blame of the responsibility of the Kenyan state that is supposed to protect its own citizens.
Okay.
Now shifting the blame to the organizations, which are also complementing the work of the government.
But just to take sorry, just hang on there.
No, you cannot, like, I'm answering his question.
Yes,
You're not the ones who answer. And that's now you see the problem of power
but
relation. You are there, but you don't want me to answer.
No, I'm going to give you a chance, but I just want to clarify something that you said, that human rights organizations do not receive a single cent for their work.
I'm not yet, like I'm saying, even if they're getting funding, me, I'm talking on a point where I'm working in Madare, where
so you're
I'm
speaking
not
on behalf
also,
of yourself?
I'm on behalf of myself and most of grassroots human rights defender that also work closely with these cases of extrajudicial killing. And one, we are given like a clear example of people like Caroline Mwatha, who went missing. And she was working for Dandora Justice Center in Dandora. Most of us, we do this work because we see violence direct or indirectly. And I'm not here to say that we are supporting criminality. But outcomes, if someone is criminal, you need to arrest them. There's legal procedure and judicial procedure. Why do we have prisons? Then we should call prisons, if you cannot use prisons.
Okay, fair point. Hang on.
Excuse me, no. There's something very important. Excuse me. No, just give me 1 minute. Just 1 minute. I would really want...
if they allow you to have that,
please allow
me.
I would really want the soul of Mwatha to rest in peace. She's a woman, she has children. I would not want to expose her. But that is what the human rights have always done. From the day the lady went missing, they started by demonstrating and saying the police, excuse me, they have said that the lady was killed by the police and so on and so forth. And the DCI did a splendid job. And we have all the chronology of events, and she knows. This lady has died, let her soul rest in peace. She has a child. I would not want to expose her. She has died, but every Kenyan knows.
No, we are not here to debate and the police say the life of a comrade that we lost. But you have been seeing clearly you're now government use narrative to...
No, I'm talking specifically about Mwatha, and I'm requesting her.
No, but we can't allow
a
police or a narrative a state that always criminalize the work of people who speak truth.
Let Mwatha's soul rest in peace. You know what happened, and it was not our cause. And it is sad, no Kenyan should die in the manner that she died.
I don't know what happened. I know she went missing.
You know, I don't want to be moral.
Rachel, let's be a bit measured on this, because you just said you don't know what happened. You
can I explain to her then what happened?
Let's bring in the other panelists.
It's good for me. It's good for me. You know, it is emotional.
It's not about emotional.
And you see that
we are used of men using that narrative. It's emotional. And this is
let me explain to you. It's very clear. We never got Mwatha where we got her on our own. We were led there by the lady who is running the clinic where she went. And before that we have even the so-called doctor who was present. And they even carried out a post-mortem and they know what happened. I just say, for the sake of Mwatha's children, she's a 12-year-old girl, let us rest her case, and if somebody has an issue, let the matter be handled by, if somebody is not satisfied on the cause of death, let it go back to court. But don't use Mwatha's name. She has a young child.
That's a good point to leave.
Yeah, she has a young child, and we know what happened, and never use it again.
Let's hear Steve first.
Steve, what do you make of these numbers? Yeah.
Mr. Ego, if you are to have a settled discussion, we must not conflate the issues.
Okay.
There's the question of police accountability for the use of force. That's a separate issue. There's the question of violence meted against police officers. This is a separate issue. There's the question of vigilance, public vigilance, which no one needs to apologize to and no one needs to mock. Now, let me deal on the law on police accountability. The National Police Service Act requires police officers to document every police killing. Later on, it will be determined whether it was extrajudicial or unlawful. Every killing by police must be documented as by law required. Secondly, those killings must be investigated and a finding made. Thirdly, a report of that finding must be communicated to the family members for closure. Does this happen?
Yes.
It doesn't. Listen, I'm in court. Listen, I'm in court for 23 petitioners, cases which were pre-selected after reviewing a lot of files, and these ones were settled. Police killings, not investigated, no action taken, in violation of the law. The purpose why, the reason why the law requires every police killing to be documented and investigated and a report given the family is to determine if there was an authorized or excessive use of force. The follow-up question to that, are the police sufficiently trained, you know, to operate in the post-2010 dispensation, or do they get training only when they are aiming for promotion? That's the question. Personally, Mr. Ino knows, when I worked as a human rights officer, we did training together on use of force, using the United Nations basic human rights standards for law enforcement officers. Have they fully been retrained so that they know? The second issue flowing from the law is personal accountability on the part of police officers. It is no longer open. I don't tell Kenyans to know, and officers should also know this. It is no longer open to police officers to waive the sanctity of orders from above. We will investigate, we will interrogate the circumstances of the killings, and if you used excessive force, then you'll be held accountable as an individual police officer. Once police officers know this, then it is easier to reduce the level of what we call excessive use of force or reliance on raw power, you know, during law enforcement activities. The second thing relating human rights reporting, it's a critical pillar. The design of our constitution requires public vigilance as one of the pillars undergirding the constitution. You should not demoralize human rights defenders by mocking them, what they do. It's completely unacceptable. Okay. The constitution is supported by public vigilance. When these figures emerge, don't tell us that bring figures that are of police officers who have been killed by other. That's a separate discussion, and we can have it another day. We're interrogating these figures. Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has always documented what they believe to be extrajudicial killings, what they believe to be excessive use of force. The kind of response we expect from the National Police Service is a response that shows us, with evidence, action taken against those officers, so that we can move the conversation forward in terms of criminal culpability. So
in your view, where is the gap, briefly, because I need to bring in Joki, despite the existence of IPOA, despite the if it's not relaunched, newly launched Internal Affairs Unit, you still say, as an advocate representing people who claim to have been, you know, violated in terms of human rights, that you still have a problem.
We have a twin problem. One is that not all these officers, and Mr. Oyeneziek can tell us, not all these officers have been retrained to know, leave alone the aggressive posture we see in Nairobi. Are we sure, can we say with certainty and evidence, and please tender that evidence to settle this matter, that all police officers have been retrained to be able to operate in a post-2010 dispensation, where there is gradual use of force, depending on the circumstance? He said that a police officer ought to be intelligent, to think on his feet. Have they really been trained? Because we know the police of old was a tool for the executive, as Mr. Eno likes to call them, someone who was open to defiance of disobedience of the law, disregard of the law, because he knows there's protection from some quarter. The second level of the problem is the police officers are not at a point where they can see their actions to be yielding to personal responsibility or accountability. And we are saying police officers must know it will no longer be business as usual that you take cover under your superior. Your use of force will be assessed on the situation based on the circumstances, and if you are found to have used excessive force, you'll be held personally responsible.
Hold that thought. Let's bring in Stephen. Stephen is calling from Kisumu. Stephen, good morning. What is your comment or question? Stephen?
Morning.
Morning. Go ahead with your comment or question, Steve.
I'm satisfied by what lawyer Ogola has been talking about. I was in the view that Charles Owino, the Kenyan police spokesman, he was trying to give his view on the police matters of extrajudicial killing. And you know, we have interacted with police. Before, police used to have that raw power, and they used to do a lot of extrajudicial killing. But today, as you look at police and their training has been done, police, as we interact with them, they are taking care of us by giving us what we call protection in matters law and order. And we are satisfied with the work that police is doing today. And I'm satisfied by Charles Owino as a spokesman of police and matters that he's speaking about today. is trying to underscore that police have reason to protect society.
All right.
And, you know, when we talk about extrajudicial per se, we are not talking about some of us interact with police. Police have never killed anybody for no reason.
Okay.
People who were killed by police, and I want to believe beyond reasonable doubt.
All right, Steve.
Police have reason to kill them because if they attack police by using force, police have reason to protect themselves.
All right, Steve. Thank you. That's Steve from Kisumu supporting the police, saying that they're doing a marvelous job there, at least is on their side. Dr. Njoki, where do you see the point of conflict?
I think there are multiple, and I do feel that this particular issue is sufficiently complex that saying that there's one solution is a lie. I feel like at this point we have to go very deep as well as very wide almost at the same time, and that again presents several issues. One is that we shouldn't have to wait for people to die to talk about human rights violations in Kenya. Kenyans are living human rights violations daily, even like basics, like we build a road but we don't build a pavement. And so when people are walking, they are dodging holes, sewers, etc., just trying to get to work, vis-a-vis cars that are driving in peace on roads that have been recently recarpeted. And so then we ask ourselves, when people are building roads, do they think about human beings or do they think about cars? So when we go into spaces where the human being has not been thought about, we have to start asking ourselves questions. And that's on the wider, when we look at these things widely. We've already been having our political rights violated. We've been having socioeconomic rights deeply violated. The wider conversations, for instance, about somebody who's bringing a bill around if a patient dies, we don't pay a bill. That mirrors, again, what we find in the Constitution as regards access to emergency health care. And that tells us that we think that we all deserve these things, but then when the government continually fails to assign budget lines to these things, then who do we expect to pay for the thing? And so those are the conversations that we need to push and continue. So those already, we are living the results of violated human rights, and so now we have to wait for all these boys to die so that then we can come and say, oh, human rights have been violated. That's not true. All of these boys have names. All of these boys came from places. The police spokesperson is a huge, and I've been listening to him talking since we got here. He uses families as analogies very often, you know, and that this is true. This is true of Kenyans. There are places that we belong, there are places that we belong to communities, and that all of these dead children, people aged from 15
to 35,
is pretty much a child, right? All of these dead people had places that they belonged to. And again, also the people who killed them are also human beings. And so that now when we have to start coming to look at where all of these people are coming from, we have to start looking at these cases not as a number at the end of a thing, but what has contributed to this situation. And so he's right when he says we need reports, we need documentation. We have those things, perhaps not. And he said that we don't. He's in court with people who don't have those things. The police spokesperson is telling us that those papers exist. Why they were not availed before these people went to court, again, is another story. So now we have to start having that conversation. When we come now to the side of the people, and that's what he's in court, that's what Wakili is in court doing, that now that these children are dead, so now, what do we do now? Because a report gives us a number. But what does that mean? What does that mean for when we say a police bullet, somebody fired it, who is that person? We need to start naming things. When we say money has disappeared, we have to stop using passive voice in this thing. Money disappears, somebody was shot, somebody is dead. Those things have meanings. A police bullet did not kill somebody. It was shot from a police gun. Each gun has an owner. Ballistics are a thing. So, like, if we trace back, we find a person at the end of this thing. And that again, one of the things, and I come now from the health side of things when we talk about these things, one of the things that we don't often think about is, and that this is a problem with armed and police forces across the world, is the reaction of somebody who is trained to use a weapon under a situation of extreme stress. And so what documentation and data do we have as regards that? Also, that a lot of the officers that we have, what do we care about the fact that a lot of them are dealing with deep trauma from multiple situations where they've been deeply stressed and deeply violated themselves? So when he talks about how many police officers have been killed, we don't also talk about how many of them have narrowly escaped death time and time and time again, and what that does to a person, because that's not normal. And so now when we have somebody who's dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, and that these are the same things that we're seeing even with our KDF forces, and so we see time and time again, a thing comes up, a police officer has killed his wife, a police officer has been incriminated in a case of domestic violence, and so we have to talk about things like those as well. But back to our dead children. The question is not that now they're dead and we've put their names, we've aggregated them in an Excel sheet of how many dead children we have. The question is, what do we do as regards finding the shooters of these bullets? What do we do as regards finding justice for these families? And what do we do as regards Kenyans understanding that it doesn't have to be death for us to start documenting human rights violations, and that's what Caroline was saying. When we start even looking at deaths, the deaths of women at the hands of their families, at the hands of contexts of work, because of just being women. The femicide rate in this country is rising. And so we can't wait until boys are being shot to say that we have human rights violations. There are so many from before. So there are multiple things to think about, and that's why I say we have to go wide, and at the same time we have to go deep, and we have to see the human being at every one of these points and stop using passive voice when we discuss these things.
I think we also have some SMSs that we'll be putting up for you shortly. 2243 is the SMS line, because we want our viewers to engage with this, because this topic is very dear to many of them. And talk to us on social media as well with the hashtag Daybreak. Spokesperson, come in.
First of all, I want to start with Ogola. We've worked together, and he knows that he has even trained a number of policemen when he was still working where he was. But number one, we are one of the institutions that document what pertains to what is done every day. We document all deaths as a matter of fact, because there's no way we can even pick a body or get somebody from even a road accident. We have to document.
Where do you store the data?
We start with our occurrence book. That is the basic area where we record all the deaths. And then what happens is that if the cause of death is not clear, especially when a person has lost his life and it is not clear on the cause of death, and more so where a person has been shot, whether shot by police or a criminal or whatever, we always open inquests into the cause of these deaths. And it is those inquests that each and every person that has information would always take it there, including the advocates. But I want to challenge Ogola. I talked about 23 cases which are undocumented. It's my humble request that as we leave this place, I want you to bring those records to me. And I hope when we meet next time, I should be able to answer directly into the records he's saying, the records he's claiming that we don't have. And then we are, and because I know we document everything. Now, what happens, what is happening is that if you look at our Constitution 2010 up to now, we were lucky we got the Independent Civilian Oversight Authority, which is not part of the police. It's completely independent, it's civilian, it has nothing to do with the police. And as the law requires currently, if anybody dies on a police bullet, there's a shootout and the person has been killed, the officer in charge of that police station must report to IPOA immediately. And they carry out their investigations. And investigations go through the normal process. We have the internal affairs and we have the IPOA. We have cases where internal affairs have recommended for officers to be charged, because we can also not allow rogue police officers to kill people. If you kill someone and it is unjustifiable, you must be charged, and we've done that. And I think you've seen quite a number of officers taken to court in the past few months who have killed people unjustifiably, and they're there to defend themselves. We have no interest in protecting a policeman who has killed someone. But I tend to agree with her on one thing. It's not an issue of just leaving it that people have died. We must go back and ask, it's deep and wide as she says it. We must ask ourselves, what is the cause? For example, if you go to Mathare, and then you document, because he was saying we forget about policemen who have been killed, that will be done another day. There's a lot of interrelation and correlation between the death of police officers and the death of civilians. And if you go to Mathare, for example, you will find that And Ogola is a good example of a person. I'm sure Ogola never came from home and went to live in Lavington. He's a person who has lived in the slums. I know that for sure. And he knows, and he has worked with boys in the slum, and he knows. Most of us from my village and community, we live in Madare and Kibra. And he knows that. He cannot lie. And he knows the level of criminality of some of these boys. He knows how they stab mamambogas in the morning, who are going to Nyamakima and the other places in the market. Ogola knows how those boys stab people, kill them. And what we are saying, why are they killing? Why are they stabbing people? Maybe poverty, they are unemployed, they want to steal from people to make ends meet, and so on and so forth. So another question that we should be asking, how do we manage the underlying factors that are leading boys to criminality? What are the factors that are leading boys to radicalization? You see, when we look at these things closely, we'll be able to manage this problem. But when we just wake up and we only wake up and say we want just to blame the police, yes, we must be blamed because it is us that have constitutional mandate to protect you.
And I want to take this as your final comment. You're asking the society to search its soul.
All of us.
Discussion.
All of us.
About the police. Yes, that's what I want to know.
All of us.
With the police
see, us, we have a constitutional role to protect everyone. We are not even supposed to kill. We are supposed to ensure that we protect everyone. But I've told you that the situation in which sometimes the police find themselves is a situation where, otherwise, you know what would have happened around before 1973. The policemen, just a minute, the policemen were not even using firearms. The policemen were using batons. Policemen started using firearms when there were vicious robberies in town, bank robberies and so on. Then the policemen got armed. We don't need firearms. If today Kenyans say, don't use a firearm, we'll not use a firearm. We use firearms to protect you. But nobody is allowed to misuse his firearm.
Fair enough.
So the issue of documentation is perfect. We are documenting. All deaths, we make sure there are inquests. You've just seen the way she has blamed us on Martha's death, and I said I don't want to talk about it, but we leave it to God. We have a responsibility. And Ogola, you are still young. I hope that when we are having the next recruitment, I want you to join police so that you have an opportunity to change police from within. I want
Fair
you
enough.
to join,
you can
I
have
want
that
you to join
discussion
police.
offline. You'll have time to talk with him.
And probably become the police spokesperson.
We are out of time. Briefly, please.
So for me, like, it's to stress more, like, now we need to take serious the life of young people and also defend the defenders that defended the life of also Kenyans. At the same time, also to bring the point of what Njoki said, the issues of femicide in this country. Women getting killed every day. It's really annoying. And also, like, seeing on how it has been normalized. And that's why, like you say, you have goodwill of protecting every life. But still also, you're yet to find a lot of questions in terms of also, like, the seriousness of also police in matters of women getting killed. And also the country at large. Why are we not talking to condemn the killing of women? Why are we normalizing killing of young women and violence against women and not taking it a matter of human rights, whereby in reality when we talk about human rights, also women's rights are human rights? And why are we seeing and not holding the people supposed to be accountable for the life of these young people? So Charles, because I've seen your goods also in terms of also talking on behalf of the police, I'm yet to hear your voice on femicide issues, and I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Steve, we haven't given him a chance to answer that question, so I won't give him a chance now. Steve, please, your final comments.
Let me, because I've already spoken on the issue of police accountability, which I said is a separate issue. But let me just comment on social cohesion and rehabilitation, which I think Mr. Wayne was alluding to. As an advocate who has a balanced view, dispassionate, and try to remain objective all the time, I think because of the disruptions in governance and the challenges of policing in this country, we've also we've left unattended the question of the responsive civil responsiveness in terms of supporting police work. Inadvertently, sometimes the errors made on the part of the police are occasioned by the reaction that civilians have, you know. So again, there'll be need, as she said, that a deeper, wider conversation will also necessarily include You know, governing
Okay.
in a country like ours presupposes that also the people are willing to be governed. You get? You must be willing to submit to authority. Otherwise, the numbers of extrajudicial killings will go up. And the police, even as they're being trained on how to escalate use of force, are the citizens also equally sensitized on how to cooperate and collaborate with policing in terms of supporting the policing work? I think that I can't say with certainty and evidence that it's ongoing or not going, but I think it's a conversation that needs to go around the discussion around building civic virtue. Building civic virtue also not necessarily emphasizes rights and privileges alongside duties and responsibilities. Do you see yourself as someone who is obliged to do something to be law-abiding and all that? Otherwise, if the entire country decides to reject law and order, even the police will not be able to police anyone. So I think that is the kind of reframing of the issue that we need.
Thank you.
Good place to leave.
Everyone's quoting you. Give us one last quote as we wrap up.
I think maybe I can finalize by saying three things. One, I would like to see a conversation between Rachel and the police spokesperson. They talked about, Rachel said that there's been conversations in Mathare on the ground around people that are willing to have conversations with police, that are willing to engage on the matter of community policing vis-a-vis the police service, and how people can actually start to chart a path to getting along. Exactly like what Wakili said, about how are people willing to have a police force, and are the police force willing to see the people where they are as they are. So that conversation would be very useful, and it appears that the police spokesperson is willing, and so perhaps he himself will go on the ground and receive the complaints of the people, because again, when we have these conversations at places where people have not been talking all the time, there will be a lot of venting, and that's part of the process. We have to accept that it's not going to be an easy conversation from the get-go, and that we have to just kind of take things slowly and move towards consensus. Consensus building is not an easy thing, but it has to happen. Maybe I can finalize with two things. That one, poverty is a deeply, deeply violent thing. Nobody is going out to stab Mamangbogas because they want. Because at that point in time, we'd be dealing with psychopathy or sociopathy. And that's not the case with the vast majority of these boys who are now having to make difficult, desperate, impossible decisions to be able to decide whether they're going to be alive tomorrow, whether they're going to have a meal, whether they're going to go home and feed their girlfriend and their baby and their wife, etc., etc. So we have to talk about the kind of violence that poverty wreaks on people, and people living in poverty are experiencing because of being denied these human rights, which then result in people being disproportionately killed in low-income areas. And finally, to just go back to the conversation that we were having at the very beginning, because on this side we're talking about lack of money, and on this other side we're talking about the disappearing billions and the mathematician Kenyans being asked to solve for X. Money doesn't disappear. The media need to stop pushing the narrative of disappearing money. Say this money was taken from this account and it was transferred because of this signature into this place. We need to be specific. When we talk about police bullets, which gun, which unit was on the ground that day, we need to be specific, such that the rest of us are not being asked to do detective work from our newspapers to be armchair analysts to say that this is what we think happened. We don't want to be hypothesized. We don't want to hypothesize these things anymore. We want to see results. We want to see solutions. We want cases to go to court and to end with justice for Kenyans. Like I said, we just want to go home with health, education, security, transport. Basics.
The story.
Give us our basics.
I think we must
we've
also...
really run out of time
but we
now.
must think of the 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old. We must ask ourselves, where are these 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-olds getting involved in crime? It's very important. We must think about issues of drugs. We must think about social obligations of parents, ensuring that these children are taken to school. It's very important. And when human rights groups are thinking about the human right of a child, think about the human right of a 14-year-old. What are you going to do? Don't just labor on police and killings. Think about this 14-year-old. How do we ensure that they have gone to school? How do we ensure that they're not involved in drugs? So that we ensure that there's no conflict. It is sad to hear that a 14-year-old child has been felled by a police bullet. Nobody will believe that this 14-year-old it was justifiable for him to be killed. So it's important, because that does not prevail on employment. And I think one of my former bosses has just reminded me that the issue of unemployment will fall only on persons who are adults, but not those who are under 18 years. So let's think about the underage. And basically, we have a we have a responsibility. The police must still be blamed, but it is important that when you blame the police objectively, so that people can be able to resolve these problems, so that we promote community policing, and we also promote the level of trust between the police and the public. And this must continue.
Really have to
you need the policeman, and the policeman needs you.
Absolutely. Let's read in some tweets coming in from our viewers on Trevor Mbija at Citizen Kenya, at Waiga Moura as well. There's also some text coming in. First one.
At Jonte, regarding extrajudicial killings, personally I've been born and brought up in Dandora, and I'm telling you, thugs are killing and maiming people on a daily basis. I never see activists talk about it, but when a thug is, in quotes, killed, they're up in arms.
All right, that's Jonte speaking to us on social media. We have more coming through, and we have one person there who doesn't leave a name. He says the human rights activists should change their name to criminal rights activists, and they should stop fighting the police. Otherwise, let them come out and defend all Kenyans, especially those killed by the criminals. Almost same sentiments as Jonte's earlier on.
Yes, and just let's see what Lazaro Fandiaradi. Wow, I hope I've said that right. Let's not put all blame on police. We know you seem to be receiving a lot of support today from our viewers. In Kenya, we're suffering from moral decays. Thugs are brutal and ready to battle out even with cops. No other method of nabbing an armed thug except gunning him down. Daybreak. All
right, very strong sentiments there. The hashtag we're using is Daybreak, and we have Okumu Steve who says it is sad these human rights activists only document cruelty of police. Who speaks for the police? You may think Kenya is a police state. All right, all of them heading towards child support. And we have a last one here.
Wow, okay. Seems to be the same trend. Glenn Kiu, human rights activists should know that even police forces are human and they also matter. Most activists these days are only there to get funding and fame. They don't understand their role.
All right, and on 224222 we have SMSs coming through to our newsroom. The first one is coming up on your screen right now. They're still speaking about the issue of extrajudicial killings, and we have Dissident Black.
Okay, Parliament's failure to adhere to the Constitution, very disturbing. How and why should the common mwananchi abide by the same Constitution when those called to duty fail to protect it? Recall MPs now. This seems to be obviously picking up from a discussion we had earlier.
We have Eddie Lodwa who says, who talks for police when these criminals kill them? Where are these human rights crusaders? I live in Turkana where our policemen die while combating bandits, I believe he means. Human rights crusaders should also consider police. They are our brothers and sisters.
Those are the SMSs we've received.
Interesting
Believe it or not. All right. Please go and have that discussion. That seems to be the message that has come out of this discussion. Time for a break.
Dr. Njokingumi doesn't look very happy. Are you okay?
Are you a mind reader? Are you a mind reader now? All right. No, she's already thinking about breakfast. We take a short break. Speaking of breakfast, Chef Ali, I believe?
Absolutely. We eat next. But first, thank you all for coming this morning. Dr. Njokingumi, Director, Outreach and Partnership, The Nest. And Hussein Khalid joined us on phone earlier on, Executive Director, Haki Africa, Rachel Mwikali, Human Rights Activist, Charles Owino, Police Spokesperson, and Steve Ogola, Advocate of the High Court. Thank you so much for your sentiments this morning. I believe we'll still have this discussion again very soon as the numbers keep coming through. And this time I hope you'll come with the statistics.
With your statistics.
Thank you so much for making time. Next, we eat.
Like next, not watching that.